Hello YouTubers and fellow hams. Well, I've spent the last couple of weeks exploring a loop on the ground. Now, the idea behind a loop on the ground is to reduce noise, or reduce the noise floor, reduce interference, and clarify existing signals. I originally looked at, as many people did, the KK5JY.net website, shown here, and I'll put a link down in the video description below if you want to look into it yourself. And his design. Now, his loop design is of a specific length because he's tuning it specifically for the amateur bands. I was more interested in shortwave listening with it, so I thought I'd just put out as much wire as I possibly could, make it as big as I could. I've got a lot of room to work with out here. Now, I had about 800 feet of wire. I had a 1,000-foot spool that I bought back when I made the Cage end-fed antenna, and I used 6 wires of 33 feet each, so that's just under 200 feet. So I knew I had about 800 foot of wire left on that spool. So I just set out to lay it out as big as I possibly could, and I made it a delta loop. Here from an overhead view, I've drawn the red lines in there where the loop is laid out, so you can see, how big it is. I don't have precise measurements, but I'm not trying to make it a resonant antenna at any particular point. I'm just trying to make it as big as possible, focusing on the lower part of the HF bands or up through the middle part of the HF bands, looking for shortwave listening. So initially I laid it out on the ground, and right down on the ground. It's a sandy soil here. The website, KK5JY Design, which he's based on another design, calls for a isolation transformer at the feed point with a ratio of 3:1, 6 turns on the secondary, 2 on the primary, and using a type 73 binocular ferrite for the winding. I didn't have any of those, so I had to order them. And while I was waiting for the parts to come in, I went ahead and hooked up just a standard common 4:1 Ballon that I had on hand to it. And I swept it with the VNA, and you can see the sweep here, and I discovered that for whatever reason it was resonant on 160 meters. Well, that's interesting. I might come back to that and try transmitting on it later on in the experiment. So eventually my parts showed up, and I went about winding the transformer. The details on that are on his website, which I've linked below if you really want to look into it, but it's pretty straightforward. 2 turns on the primary that goes to the coax, 6 turns for the secondary that goes to the loop, gives it a 3:1 matching ratio, and DC isolation. Now, in a couple of videos that I saw, well, at least in one video I saw, the guy referenced that it was a isolation transformer and said that that's important, and we'll talk about it later, but he never did. So I'm not sure exactly why it's important that it have an isolation transformer. I don't know. I'm sure that there's theories, but anyway, I went ahead and followed the design because that's what it called for as far as that transformer goes. So I put that transformer on, and I set about comparing the response of the loop to the response of my doublet antenna to look at what it does for the noise floor, for local noise interference, and for signals. Let's go look at that clip. All right, we're comparing the loop on the ground to the doublet. This is the loop on the ground. This is the doublet. Now you can see the noise floor jump up. In fact, we've got a grid line here. This is kind of helpful. So right now our noise floor is hovering right around this grid. I'll leave the mouse pointer sitting there. Let's go to the loop. And it dropped by 1 grid line. So the noise floor definitely drops down. We're still seeing some static crashes. You can see those through here. Those are the horizontal bands that go all the way across. And that's because there's a lot of storms going on across the US right now. Anyway, let's look at some signals. Okay, so this guy here is peaking right there. So he's peaking 2 lines above the noise floor, right? This is on the loop. Let's go to the doublet. And he stops talking. We'll have to wait for him to start talking again. No, there we go. And so our noise floor is hovering around this line. He's peaking just shy of there. So it looks like signal to noise ratio got a little bit better. Switch back to the loop while okay, he stopped. I'm going to have to switch while he's talking. There we go. Okay, he's peaking just over one line. And now he's peaking almost two lines over the noise. So in this case, it looks like we're mostly just seeing attenuation going on with the loop on the ground. Let's listen to the audio.
Get their butt tore off. Oh, Mexico is getting into Iowa.
This is on the loop.
In Nebraska. Yeah, really ain't too much. Probably Colorado might have a little, but most of the lightning is actually in Mexico.
We don't really hear a difference. Let's find a weaker signal and see if we can pull a weaker signal out better on the loop. He's pretty strong over here. Where's a weak one? There's a weak one, I think. Okay, we'll go to the loop. Yeah. Not a whole lot of improvement. This is the doublet, by the way. You can tell when I switch, the noise comes way up in the waterfall. Well, you can kind of judge for yourself, but it looks like there might be a slight improvement in signal-to-noise ratio. I was thinking initially that the loop on the ground was just going to attenuate things, that there really wouldn't be much of a difference in noise noise versus signal. I figured the signals would come down just as much as the noise floor did, and it's pretty close to that here. Let's go to 40 meters. And we're still on the loop. And okay, let's see. Our noise floor is just below this line. And this guy's peaking almost two lines up. And this is on the doublet. The noise floor came up. And it looks like about the same amount of peak versus noise floor. So signal noise looks like it stays the same, and we're just attenuating. Let's go back to the loop. And again, it looks like, yeah, it's about the same ratio of his peaks to the noise floor. So, not a huge difference. And, oh, man, this guy is fat. Look at that. He's splattering over into the upper sideband over here. Oh, man, some of these guys, they crank things up too much, I think. But there's some weak stations there. Let's listen.
Really cool. Oh, I doubled. Are you the person who is sharing the story about solar panels?
This is on the loop.
That was me.
Let's go to the doublet.
Here's a quick, interesting little story that drove me up the wall. And basically, I've had horrible clicking noise on 40 and 20, especially on 40. And it would be every second.
Back to the loop. And
I traced it down to one of my circuits on the circuit board.
The doublet.
On the breaker box. And I pulled every
not a huge amount of difference. Now let's go down to the AM broadcast band. I'll see if I can find a station that's not broadcasting music. Nope, music. All right.
Individuals and businesses
there we go.
With tax problems. Listen carefully. Do you feel like you're...
The nice thing with AM stations is we've got a carrier, so we've got a nice steady peak in the middle, right? This is on the doublet. So our noise floor is just above this graticule line here, And that station is peaking 1, 2, 3 above the noise floor. Let's go to the loop. And our noise floor dropped a little. 1, 2. Not a great improvement there. I think it depends on the station too and where they're at. Like, let's look at this one over here. Okay, so on the loop, we got our noise floor right at this line, and he's peaking about 2/3 up to the next one. All right, let's go to the doublet. Noise floor came up a little bit, but his peak did not. So the signal to noise ratio definitely got worse. Back to the loop. Yeah, see, that's an improvement. Okay, let's go listen to that guy. Oh, good, it's voice. This is on the loop. Oh, that's a marked difference, wouldn't you say? That's the doublet. And we can hardly hear the station. He's down in the noise. Back to the loop, and we can hear him. So there definitely is an improvement in signal to noise. Doggone it. Yeah, not much of a difference. Really, it's a strong station, though. Let's find another weak one. Let's say we were hunting. Okay, this is on the doublet. Let's go to the loop. There's actually another station fighting with it now. Okay, not a good example. Interesting little noise source over here, huh? So we've got some noise. This is probably from the power converter in my RV or some other local source. This is on the doublet. Let's go to the loop. Oh, hey, look at that. The loop is not picking up that locally generated noise source. And that took the station from that, with that annoying locally generated noise, to listenable. You can still see the noise, it's still there, but it's much weaker. So definitely the loop on the ground is working well at filtering out locally generated noise sources. So that's all pretty interesting, huh? I did a graphic where we can look at them side by side. Let's go take a look at that. So here in a side by side, it's a little bit more obvious. You can see where the noise floor has come down, but the signals have not come down as much as the noise floor. So the loop on the ground is definitely doing good for reducing noise, atmospheric noise, and locally generated noise, and allowing the signals to pop out of the noise a little bit better. So, hey, it actually does work. So yeah, pretty interesting. It does do what you'd expect. It does reduce noise. Mostly I think that's attenuation. The loop being right on the ground is loading the antenna up and absorbing signals. So it's really not much different from switching in an attenuator on your radio. Although we did see that there was, at least on the AM broadcast band, an improvement in signal to noise ratio. So although both the noise floor and the signals were reduced, the noise floor was reduced a little bit more than the signal was reduced. So there was a greater ratio of signal to noise visible. Another interesting thing that I noted was that the noise characteristics of the loop changed. It was doing a little bit better at rejecting locally generated noise from domestic sources like the power converters in our RVs, power supplies, switching supplies, all the stuff that generates hash and crud on HF was reduced a little bit. So it definitely is a quieter antenna for receiving. Now, I decided to try and extend the experiment a little bit. I thought, what happens if we raise the loop up slightly off the ground? Maybe about 4 feet or so. And that's what I did. Out at the hardware store, I found these plastic rods in the gardening center that were all about 4 feet long, or about 1.3 meters. So I bought a bunch of those, and I came back, and I scrambled at sunset to get those pounded in and raise the loop up about 3 feet, a little over 3 feet, or a little over 1 meter off the ground. And then I came back in and I swept it again. And here's the sweep. Now, compared to the original sweep of it, we can see that just raising it a slight bit off the ground greatly reduced the loading the ground was putting on the antenna, and the peaks and valleys of SWR and impedance grew tremendously. So it's obvious how much loading of the antenna or damping down of the antenna the ground is doing when it's right on the ground. But can you transmit on it now? Yes, but not well. I didn't have any hits on 80 meters on Whisper. I had just a few on 40. So it does radiate, but not very well. Still, undeterred, I tried to make a contact on it, tried to check into the Cracker Barrel net with it one morning. Let's take a look at that.
Okay, I'm going to try transmitting to them on the loop near the ground and see if they can hear me. Yeah, KB9RLW. Real quick, can you guys still hear me? Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? I'm on the loop. I'm on the loop that's 1.3 meters off the ground. Over.
SDR.
How's my signal on the SDR up there in Utah? Over.
It's very light, but also very comfortable.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I'm recording this clip, by the way, so this will be in the video. So yeah, I am transmitting with 30 watts into a loop that's close to 160 meter resonant loop that is just over 3.5 feet off the ground. So that's real interesting that you guys can actually hear me on the SDR. 73 all, and hey, thanks for watching there. And I'll look up Jack Kerouac. Don't mind the jazz music, though, by the way. That'll be all right, too. Anyway, back to the group. KB9RLW. Well, how about that? They actually heard me on the...
Yeah, Kevin, I looked at both SDRs and Utah, you were about S5, S4, S5, and on Utah, about an S5, S6 on the half-moon day. So not bad signal out of the raised loop on the ground there, just to give you a little heads up. And with that,
thanks, guys. Well, there we go. That's interesting. It actually can transmit.
So overall, a pretty interesting experiment for me. I learned a few things, got a few more things stuck in my head. Oh, by the way, when I made that contact on it, I had switched back to the 4-to-1 balun. With the isolation transformer in there, it really didn't radiate very well at all. In fact, I didn't get any hits on Whisper at one point testing with that. So I put the regular 4-to-1 balun on it, just as you would like with a sky loop. If I had this thing up 30 feet or more in the air, that's what I would use as a 4-to-1 current balun to feed it. So basically it's a sky loop that's only 3 feet off the ground. I was able to get out, but I wouldn't use it as a transmitting antenna. There's still just way too much absorption at the ground loss going on with it being so close. I figured it would either show what it did, which was a lot more was a lot of absorption, or it would become an extreme NVIS antenna and throw most of its signal straight up, which is probably a little bit of both, but still it's not a good transmitting antenna. So what's my conclusion with the loop on the ground idea? Yes, it probably is a good receive antenna, probably more beneficial if you're in an urban environment with a lot of local noise sources, neighbors, that are just polluting HF with all these hashes and spikes and things. It will definitely reduce those quite a bit. It does reduce signals, So it's not maybe useful for weak signal reception, but definitely beneficial for moderate to stronger signals. You get a little bit more pop of the signal out of the noise. There's a little bit better ratio of signal to noise with the loop on the ground. So it's definitely a good option for a receive antenna. Additionally, I saw real good performance on the AM broadcast band, but the loop is quite large, as you remember, so it's more closer to being resonant there, close to the AM broadcast band, so it's definitely better for or around the frequency range that it's cut for. So if I was going to put out a loop on the ground for a receive antenna for a specific band, like let's say I mostly worked 20 meters, I might cut the loop smaller, make it closer to a resonant full wave size for 20 meters. And you'd probably need to use a different ferrite there too. The Type 73 ferrite is really best for the lowest frequencies. For 80 meters, follow the design on KK5JY's website, and you'll probably get the best performance on 80 and maybe 40 meters with it. Follow the specific lengths. So yeah, that's my conclusion. It does work as a better noise rejecting reception antenna for the HF bands. So it was pretty interesting playing with it. I will keep it in the back of my mind. I might employ that idea again when I move back to my quiet spot down in Quartzsite, because there will be more RVs around me and I always have more interference. And again, when I'm down in Yuma for the winter, with all the RVs that are down in that area, there's always a lot of noise. So I might put one back out on the ground when I'm down in those areas just for receiving and shortwave listening to help reject some of the locally generated noise. I think it's a winner for that. So I hope you found that little exploration interesting, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also, if you're not already a subscriber, click to subscribe. Join us on the Facebook channel for discussion about the videos. And if you'd like to help support this channel, please click to support me on my Patreon page.